So today's myth is that the pill does not affect your training capacity or performance, or it doesn't have an effect on your body, which is not true because obviously it prevents ovulation and stops you getting pregnant. And when a woman's vital sign of health is her menstrual cycle, this is not necessarily a problem, but it's clearly an effect. So unfortunately, while we know the pill does affect your training capacity and it does affect your performance, we actually don't know how because there's scarce research, there's conflicting research, and sometimes the research is like comparing apples and oranges because there's so many different kinds of hormonal contraceptives, and they're made up of different hormones, especially when you've got primarily estrogen-based, that's the wrong word, but estrogen-based hormones or progestin-based hormones. So, and then there's like blended pills as well as inserts and IUDs and so forth. So yes, it affects, but we don't know how. But anywhere between 45 and 70% of your clients, your female clients, are going to be on the pill. So, or some kind of hormonal contraceptive. So it would be useful to have some kind of knowledge on the subject. So there are side effects, obviously, to taking the pill, like migraines, mental health dysfunctions. That's obviously going to affect their training, but it's not, directly being on the pill related. And the effects of being on the pill is not always negative. So some of the stuff we have seen is that women on the pill don't have the increase of soft tissue injury around ovulation. However, they're still 8 times more likely to be injured or have a soft tissue injury than a man. So the pill will close the gap, but it doesn't take that risk away completely. Just the fact you're a woman means you have more joint laxity, and it will mean that you need to look after your joints, work on your stability. Your training will be more consistent if you're on the pill than your menstruating counterparts, which means rather than cycling your intensity, you can have like a linear progression. Doesn't matter who you are, man, woman, on the pill or not, you should always have an off week every sort of 4 to 5 weeks. And by off week, I don't mean complete rest. I mean 60% intensity, a bit of cross training, just back it off a bit. It's great for your brain. Generally speaking, women on the pill will have a lower exercise performance, but it's slight. There's some research that says women on the pill have trouble gaining muscle size, but there's not a lot of research on muscle strength. So, there are plenty of athletes performing at the highest levels that are on the pill. So you can't say you don't gain muscle strength, but the size is a possible detriment. The pill will give your training athletes some measure of control. So there was an issue in the Wimbledon tennis last year where women were speaking out about the stress of being on their period and having to wear white. So that measure of control, while menstruating doesn't have an impact on performance, being worried about bleeding through onto your whites will have an impact on performance. So it's really, really, really hard to give you a definitive answer. So regarding muscle mass, you have to bear with me because this was hard to untangle. Some hormonal contraceptives affected your ability to gain it, but a lot of it depended on what kind of pill. So that research I'm talking about was a ethanol estradiol pill, whereas women on a progestin pill were shown to gain muscle size in that period. So it's, again, so contradictory. There is possibly a reduced ability to recover for women on the pill, or their high recovery window is different. So as we know, women who are menstruating in their luteal phase, the second half of their cycle, they have increased antioxidant, they have increased circulation, they have increased ability to recover, and so can train for higher volumes and higher like longer sessions. However, women on the pill just have a little window whilst they're on their withdrawal bleed and the first few days where they resume the pill. That's when they have their enhanced recovery, but it's still not as enhanced as a menstruating woman. Probably the biggest problem for me with clients on the pill, if they're in the gym a lot, it's RED-S, so relative energy deficit syndrome. That's where they lose their cycle because of either a calorie deficit, a nutrient deficit, or overtraining. Just relative means it's either, you know, they might be eating a lot, but they're not eating enough to cover the cost of their training. So if they're on the pill, you can't see that. And RED-S has a huge impact, not just in the short term, but for life, on heart health, bone density, brain health, performance, et cetera, et cetera. So my preference, if someone's training a lot, is that they're not on the pill, just so I can use their cycle as a sign of health. Because if they're not getting enough calories, nutrients, vitamins, their period will be affected, not always by like losing it, sometimes by just falling into an irregular cycle, or they have a regular cycle but they're not ovulating. And that's a sign. It's a massive sign. It's very useful information that you either got to dial up the food or dial down the training. So I'm certain that was a terrible job. For your regular training for health clients, you know, it probably doesn't matter so much whether they're on the pill or not. You just need to understand some of these issues. However, for your athletic clients, there's a slight chance they'll have a very slight performance drop-off, and their window of recovery is slightly less. But from the little we know, which is very, very little, it's hard to give you good quality, certain information. If you have any questions, or you want me to re-record this with better research under my belt, I can just comment or send me the message. Otherwise, I will see you next week.